All right, here with me today, I have a very exciting guest, Bill Hemstapat. Actually, should have checked before. Did I say that right? By the way,
Yeah, you did
excellent.
great.
Yes. All right, we're off to a great start. Bill is has been working on movies, film, and video games, and his latest project that he was working on, Ghosts of Tsushima. Ghosts. Tsushima. I
That
was
happens to
looking.
me too, just so you
You know,
know.
I was just thinking to myself. I was just telling my wife before, like, I came up here. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna mix up the I and the U in this name. I totally know it.
There you
And
go.
there I did. I did it. So I cursed myself. But anyways, Ghost of Tsushima, and Ghost of Tsushima rather, and he did some additional music. It was the arranger and the music editor on the project, which is just like a super exciting uh, opportunity that I'm sure lots of people would probably like, like hire a hitman to take you out and take your place if they could, because I know that people would love to be a
That
part of
sounds a little
projects like that.
scary.
Yeah, well, it probably won't. It's a very nice community here, so I think you're probably reasonably safe. But thank you so much again for taking the time this afternoon to speak to me and answer some questions. I know that your experience is probably going to be really interesting and helpful to
Sure.
composers and other musicians trying to break into the industry. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. So let's just dig right in. Let's go back to like kind of the beginning, like out of school into the first like video game project. Like, how did you get like your first step in the door for the world of video games?
Yeah, so it's actually through I went to USC in a screen scoring program, and there they have a great scoring for video games class with Garry Schyman, who wrote for BioShock and all those things. And obviously he's a great well-known name in the industry, and he's taught me a lot, and he also knows a lot about what's happening in the industry as well. And it turns out that there was an internship opportunity coming up at Sony, and just learned later that that actually just happens every summer. Just nobody really was like posting them around or anything. So Gary told me, he was like, hey, it looks like, if you're interested in getting in the door, this might be a great opportunity for you. So I applied, and with his recommendation letter, and that caught the eye of my current manager now, Peter Scaturo, who gave me a call a few months later and was like, "Hey, we looked at your cover letter, and it seems like what you're talking about is kind of in line with our internship here." So yeah, I was going to be set to graduate from USC, go straight to PlayStation as an intern. Now, a little drama happens where the visa, the work visa. So I'm not a U.S. citizen, so I need a U.S. work visa. That is kind of like a thing that comes after school. That didn't come in on time,
Mm.
and Sony being the corporation that it is, they were like, this absolutely we cannot let you in and do the work for us. So that kept getting delayed and delayed to the point where the internship window has passed
Mm.
already. So I did not get to do any of that internship at all. Fast forward 3 months later, my visa finally came. I was already kind of looking for other avenues to excel my career, and also staying alive as a creative professional. So I contribute some additional music for a few other guys doing tech jobs, assistants and stuff. And Pete called me again and was like, "Hey, did your visa ever came?" This was like September or something, so 3 4 months already after school. And I was like, "Yeah, it came. I'm working with a few other guys already. Yeah, but I'm glad you asked, and what's going on." And he was just like, "Yeah, we really need help on this game. God of War. It's just it's getting quite a bit big for us to handle in house with just only a few editors. So we need a few more hands. Would you be interested in just getting hired as a contractor and just sort of learn on the job?" And so I obviously cannot say no to that.
I was gonna say
And
you were like, no, I'm not interested at all. Like,
no, and look, I didn't know what I was getting into, obviously, but I was just like, I was so curious, just because I've heard about composers writing music for games and stuff, but my curiosity lies within like, so what happened after they've done composing? Like, you get the WAV file exported of a final mix. Where does that go? And how do they do these whole like adaptive music thing? And I wanted to know all about that, despite me wanting to be a composer, and writing music still inspires me. So I said yes, like without any hesitation. I came down to the campus for an additional interview one more time, and then he talked about what my responsibilities are going to be, which at that time it started kind of like with like, hey, you got to be play testing a little bit just to see if you can get a hang of our system, and you maybe help renaming some files and document some stuff. And that quickly, like, I mean, it's kind of, these kind of tech tasks are not like difficult for me, so I was quickly excelling and learning on the job, and that's kind of how I got started at PlayStation. And I've been involved with these guys ever since.
That's awesome. Now, I actually want to swing back to so when you were learning from Gary originally in school, I think one of the interesting things you said was that he wrote you a letter of recommendation. Now I'm curious. I don't know personally how big the program is, or if like if it's a crew of like my music education degree. So that's what I went to school for. There was like 6 people in the choral music education
Right.
degree when I was
Our
graduating.
class is 20 people. Yeah.
So here's
Per
my
year.
next question then. What do you think that you did that set you apart from that class? Because I imagine he's not writing a letter of recommendation for everyone. You know what I
You know
mean?
what though? The thing is, only I applied for that job. Actually, he sent that link out to everybody, but there was not really that many people that were interested in
Ah,
this opportunity, because everybody wanted to be a composer.
I
And
see.
this is like the actual position is music production assistant intern, I think. Like it's like,
Hmm.
and it's an assistant and it's an intern. So it's like very far down the line, I guess, in that sense. And the job description that was listed on the Sony website was like, it was pretty clear. It was going to be like Pro Tools file management, play testing, and additional responsibilities in technical technology sort of stuff. And I think, if I would say that if anybody in that class was willing to apply for this job, Gary would probably write a recommendation letter for them. And I feel like everybody is doing really well in that class, and we were
It's
learning new
awesome.
things. But I was just, I just had like a sort of an interest for this weird little niche thing, whereas everybody else kind of like they gravitate towards films and TV and being composer assistants and stuff. So I just happened to be interested in, just like I love games, and I can't deny an opportunity
Yeah,
to just be like, hey, this is the largest company ever, and if I could have a shot at it, I would, I would try.
I know. Like I'm just thinking, like so many people who I talk to through this website would probably be like, clawing to get in to one of these big companies like Sony. That's just really awesome. And I think that's really important too that you started with an internship. I think that people, like you said, a lot of people want to skip forward to composer. And I don't think that's always necessarily possible.
Yeah,
Or if it
it's
is,
not a
it's just,
bad thing in any
nope.
means at all.
Yeah.
And it's totally viable. I just happen to think that like just because the name PlayStation is involved, I kind of know that if I wanted to be a part of that, I would have to start from the very bottom, really.
Right. Totally.
And that's kind of where I landed.
Awesome. Now, and then fast forward, how did you end up working on Ghosts of Tsushima? How did that project kind of come around? Because that's always going to be the number one question people ask. How did you
Yeah.
get the gig? How did you get the
Of
project?
course, yeah, and I'm happy to answer this kind of in very open manner. So, like I said, I had that job of God of War, and worked on Days Gone as well. Now, after that, I actually have to be honest. The job turned out to be something that I felt like it was not growing for me at that time. Like it was, you know, a lot of the same stuff, and I was kind of seeing a lot of the senior editors and where they're going, and I was kind of like, that's really not where I want to be, which is living in like the programming world and being really caught up with trying to put music in the game and focusing on implementation 100%. There's
Uh,
nothing wrong with that at all, and that's their interest, and
yep.
that's great. But for me, like I said, I still enjoy writing music, but I'm interested in how to integrate the kind of knowledge that I know from the implementation side of things into my own music, and trying to make the two worlds feel closer together rather than just kind of this clear split line in the middle that, like, composer writing in a bubble and then it comes across to the other side, and the rest is history or something like that. I just feel like I'm more interested in that collaborative process. So I left actually after 6 months or so, of doing the. Actually, my title then was associate music editor at that time, and after that, I told Pete, who's my manager now, I was like, hey, feel free to call me anytime if you ever need other kind of help. I just want to be out front with you that I love working with you. You're a really great mentor to me. Please keep in touch. And I think it was a matter of 2 months or something. Pete called and was like, hey, we're working on this E3 presentation for this one game. We can't tell you what it is, but we're looking for a very specific kind of arrangement for this, because like E3 trailers are usually really specific. There's a very clear path of what they want to present, and a lot of times the needs there are really specific, and there's a lot of iteration to make it perfect. So they just wanted somebody to kind of be like, all right, you're gonna stay with us until the iterations are done. And then that turned out to be Ghost of Tsushima. Like I mentioned in the blog, Shigeru Umebayashi, who's the composer, he wrote some music that are like, there are some themes and stuff there. And I think Pete just wanted somebody to kind of help adapt that to this E3 showcase and take care of all the many different iterations that it's going to go through. So that's how I first got involved. And afterwards, E3 is gone, and the presentation went great, and it's all kind of silence for me for a little bit. I got called back in occasionally for a few other editing things that is like a one-off. You hear for a month doing Death Stranding. I'm like, okay, how much do I have to do? It's like, as much as we will give you for the entirety of 1 month. I've done quite a bit of those jobs. And then after a while, they also contracted me for another project, which is still going on now, by the way. I can't really talk about that too much just yet. But because of that other project and how well I've been doing, kind of, with my knowledge of how the Sony team works, and while I'm a freelance now, I know everybody in that department, and I'm able to interface with them in ways that I think are a little bit more friendly and familiar to the team, hopefully. So fast forward for almost a year after that E3 showcase, Pete was like, hey, we're getting to the tail end of this Ghost of Tsushima thing. We're looking to have some more music arranged, and same thing with Shigeru Umebayashi. He's written some themes. He's written, a big bulk of established sort of an aesthetic of sort already. We want somebody to sort of arrange it to be full on 45 minutes, 50 minutes suites. And would you be interested? And I was like, well, why not, right? I can't say no to that again. And yeah, and then that's just how I got involved.
That's awesome. Now, that, first of all, that's an amazing story, and I think that there's like so much to kind of take out of there, like, being the person who is not only valuable enough to come, be asked to come back just after like 2 months of being gone. Clearly, you were missed, and
Hopefully.
and well, at least people saw the value of your work, right? And then to also, you just mentioned a moment ago, being the person who like works well with like all the other pieces of the team, which I think is super important. A lot of times people, especially in multi-department companies, get really comfortable with their department and kind of existing in that bubble, but being the person who can be, move from like, team to team, person to person, and work well with everyone. I think it's such a valuable skill set that I think that a lot of times people will just completely discount, because like I said, it's sort of,
you've said it there. You've nailed it pretty much. And I think there is that kind of camaraderie aspect of it, where it's like you're not trying to serve anybody. You're just collaborating together. Even me as a freelance outside of the company at that time, I was like thinking, oh, okay, if Andrew was going to edit this, he would probably want these things kind of written out a bit this way, and knowing what they are going to do to it helps a lot. And me having the window into how that department functions in the first place gave me sort of, I think, that comfort level to be like decisive about my choices and be like, I think I'm gonna do this because I know that they are probably gonna want things split out this way and stuff like that. So yeah, it becomes more of like a collaborative effort, and I think personally it's like I fell in love with music when I was playing in bands with people, right? And like music is just better shared in general than just like you're living in your own bubble. So I love that aspect of it, and clearly I think that people see some value in that and brought me back.
Awesome. Now, as someone who's doing some additional music, a lot of arranging and a lot of editing, I'm specifically really interested in the arranging piece of it because I feel like people, especially just starting out, they kind of have to be their own arranger, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like there like is a separate set of skills there that is sort of related, but also separate from just the raw creative energy composition piece of it. So I'm wondering if you could like kind of explain like what your perspective is, because that's obviously an outsider's perspective. I don't
Yeah.
do that, but what would you say is your perspective on like what skills are really important to arranging and maybe like how to develop those skills?
Well, definitely. So first of all, I have to establish that to me, arranging is it's a trade skill. This doesn't, well, this may sound bad, but to me, it is not a creative job. There is a set of like parameters that you need to hit, and like you were saying, like composition, that is where all the creative stuff happens. My focus is on how do I make this work with the product, and through the very like clear punch list of what the client wants or what the developer wants. And a lot of times, I have to say, I mean, we have all probably worked on one of those, independent projects where you go through iterations after iterations of like keeping to having to revise things to the point where, you know, the music is unrecognizable from the first draft that we did that we're so proud of. And just because of having to deal with the notes about, hey, it doesn't quite work with our product in this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kind of reasons, and then you having to reiterate that to the point where it's just not musically satisfying anymore. While it still works with the product, it doesn't quite stand out as a great musical piece, right? There's some compromise made there. So I think me being in this unique position of understanding video games, understanding the production pipeline of Sony, and understanding kind of, where each composers come from that we've worked with, I take all of that into consideration and basically kind of just, be like, how do I make everybody satisfied? And being that middle person that, kind of like looks at the way to compromise the least of the musical integrity, but at the same time making it work for the developer, or even helping, kind of like hand guiding a certain aspect of it that like, hey, aesthetically, this is something that the composer was really keen on, and we wanted to embed that into the game. Could you, um, you know, modify a certain aspect of a certain level or a certain gameplay moment to be a little bit more like this, just to facilitate with, what we felt like is a strong musical choice. So I'm kind of taking care of that aspect of it. Like, for example, you know, I'll call him Ume for now. That's the name that we call Shigeru Umebayashi. He likes to be called Ume just from his last name. So Ume is he's 68, 69 years old now, and he's never really touched any AAA games. He may have played games in the past, but they're games in like PS1 era, or the early Nintendo or Famicom era, whatever. Um, but and games have come so far away now that you know the it's aesthetically complicated to achieve a certain result, and at the same time they want a very aesthetically complicated cinematic sounding musical experience that is equal to like TV or feature
Film,
films
yeah.
even. And for Ume to have to focus on things like, oh, but where is the trigger is going to be to trigger to the next part of the piece, and how is it going to get transition, that will compromise his time on being creative, right? I think that just kind of hinders to the fact that this is not his like territory. Like, he writes great music and he should just focus on that. And there's a certain level of musical like integrity that Sucker Punch as a developer already loved in Ume's music. So why compromise that when he could just kind of focus on doing his thing, and then I could then help with the adaptation of it to the level that makes it work.
Awesome. Now, I'm just kind of curious, and this may be not an answer that either that you can give straightforwardly, or maybe just an answer that maybe you can't give because of the project. But like, what sort of, like, when you get handed a new theme or something like that to work with, what kind of state is that in at that point where you first get your hands on it? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah. I can kind of provide a little bit of window into that. With Ume, he sketches a lot of the stuff in his like on his synths, and he would write like a melody, really strong melodies, and a lot of times with some clear concepts in mind that he was like, I want this to be slowly developing, really strong. But he was also kind of very like, how do I say, like philosophical about how he wants his music to be presented. Like, he was strong on not wanting things to sound Western in a certain regard, despite us using orchestras. And he was like, if you're talking Japanese culture, you got to hold back a little bit on the harmony, or the their simplistic of idea of how to develop in kind of his mind that he wanted to see. But he doesn't really have to kind of think about that too much, because we're going to kind of take care of that. But he just kind of focuses on the concept and the strong melodies, and the sort of the strong integrity that what he wants to communicate, I guess. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, he sketched something on the synths, and then he gave some notes to kind of be like, hey, this is how I want it to feel. And the person who really was crucial to that process was Chad Cannon, who is another arranger on the project, but he speaks fluent Japanese. He was in Fukuoka for like, I think 4 or 5 years or something. And yeah, he actually flew to meet with Ume one time, and they have that relationship where they would talk about the arrangement, and Chad would kind of help us with like, hey, this is Ume's vision. He wants to see it kind of like this. And, we kind of follow that direction that he gave us.
That's awesome. That's great that I think it's so cool that you had such a fusion of different perspectives on the music of
Yeah.
the game. I think that's just so special. I think it's one of the reasons why the game ended up having such a special soundtrack. Other than being a fantastic, beautiful game.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's I think what happens is when you put more hands on the deck, everybody is bringing something, right? It's like doing like one of the largest potluck thing ever, and we're all bringing something, and in the end, the final product is so unique just because everybody has got a little touch of their own thing on it. And I'm feeling immensely proud of what we have achieved as a team, and also just proud for how well the game is doing as well.
Yeah, and I think also that because everyone is specialized and focused on a
Yeah,
piece of it, not only does that make you like more nimble in a lot of ways than a single person could be, but
right.
it just creates such a different product than if you are, there are lots of people who do the whole thing all by themselves, and
Yeah,
that's great, and some people love that, and some people are stressed out by that, and there are a lot of magical, wonderful, award-winning soundtracks from
Oh yeah,
one person. But the yield of that would be, first of all, take way longer and also be very different if they had, this different approach of having a lot of people. If someone could just focus on writing the melodies and the themes and conceptualizing the pieces and then be able to hand off the next stage of that process, it would just
yeah,
yield such a different results. I think it's really cool to hear Sony taking this
definitely.
approach of really kind of allowing people to sort of shine in the way that they
It's different, right?
shine best.
And I think, I love Lena Raine soundtrack for Celeste. That's a one man product as well.
Beautiful,
And
yeah.
it's like I mean, I feel like there's definitely a charm to having one singular vision on a project like that. And but I think with for Ghost, it's just such a huge game that there was no way that, there's gonna be one person who's gonna be like calling the shots and be like, this is right. Because you aren't gonna end up getting like, blindsided like indefinitely. And there's just going to be areas where you ended up slacking off or like be like, it's not as important to me, so I'm not going to focus on that right now. But these are the pillars are important. But by, like you said, by having people that are specialized in a certain thing, and this goes through the implementation process as well, where a certain member of our team will own like this one quest line. They will only look at that, and this other person will only look at these 2 3 other quest lines, and they'll be on it reiterating it until the developer is happy with it. And like I was doing a lot of golden path editing where the main story is happening, while a lot of the other guys are helping me taking care of all these side quest stuff that I would have never had time to go look at to begin with. So
Awesome. Yeah, like I said, way more nimble when you you can do way more with more
definitely
people, like math, right?
requires more resource as well, to be frank. So like
Sure.
it's possible within the Sony fence, but
Yep.
yeah, if you can share it with other people, is always great.
It's awesome. Yeah, I mean, just even when you think about like the E3 trailer, like you were describing, the first soundtrack I sang on was the E3 trailer for Final Fantasy, and I remember just that was just the timeline for that for me was just breathtakingly short in terms of when we
Yeah,
recorded the choir and when that went out to the world. And I
there you
mean,
go.
that was just terrifying for me. I was like, wait, this is going out when? Oh my gosh. That's wow. Okay, cool. 2 weeks.
I mean,
Roll.
similar
Like it
story here.
yeah, I mean
Because
so
I
like
had what 4 days to do the E3 presentation before it goes to Nashville to record. That was quite short as well. So
yeah. Yeah, but then the big pipeline can push that kind of stuff through quickly if it needs to. Um which is just a really exciting and in some ways terrifying. So, um I'd love to talk a little bit too about the when you get something you want to work on, do you have like a step-by-step process for arranging? And I'm kind of also, I'm asking this question in mind of like the composers who are maybe doing their own arranging, who maybe start with something, like maybe they sketch it out on the piano and then they have to take that into a full fruition piece. So do you have like a
yeah.
step-by-step sort of like framework that you use for yourself to flesh something out from sketch to, full on?
I don't know about the step by step, but I can kind of give a little bit of window into it a little bit, because I mean I'm doing this with another project as well, where we're arranging quite a few bits of things for a Japanese composer, but it's it's different for every project, right? Because every project has their sort of special needs. But with Ghost in particular, I think it was important for me to kind of sit down and play the game as it was a little bit, just to kind of understand the pacing and how, because the past games I've worked on were like God of War and Death Stranding. Those are very different games as well, right? They're like they've got their own. Like God of War was very linear, and Death Stranding was so open with like a bunch of cinematics and stuff. It's all different aesthetics here and there. Um, but with those, I kind of started to get a sense that, oh, they want people to get lost in this world, and they want, they want to milk the moments where you're taking in the scenery, and like seeing a bird is like a big deal for them. Like it's like they want people to be like spotting the bird, the little fox, that comes by. And that's why photo mode in their game has been such a successful thing, because they really feel like this is important for them. So that I realized that from the get-go, one of the important virtues of that is tranquility. And the second thing is the idea that their nature in their game in particular, it's always so dynamic. Like you would stand still, right? And then you'd hear leaves in the background, and you'd hear the water ripples, and even the clouds, you can kind of see like the little ray of sun coming in and out, and their environment's like ever shifting, every little blade of grass and stuff. So there's also this idea of movement, where even in the most still quiet moment, you know it it can't be perfectly still, because that makes it feel more static and feel maybe slightly more like futuristic of sort. We see games like that are taking in these kind of cyberpunk, or sort of the neo-noir kind of stuff, where their environments are a little bit more like technology oriented. It's a little more static. So it's a very different environment. But with this, when we're dealing with nature, and I actually did a thing where I went to the Getty Museum, and I sat at the very, kind of at this very top area, and looked down at the view, and just feeling that same kind of realization that, hey, like nothing is ever really super still. So within the arrangement, I know that, okay, first of all, we have to give Ume's demos, like these synths demo, a little bit more movement. Even though they're simple chords, simple melodies, there has to be just a little bit of that almost like wave riding kind of
Fluidity.
feeling.
Yep.
Yeah, and kind of flows like water in sort of a certain sense. So that was my number one goal, was how do I bring movement, a sense of movement that will make his music match with the game that we're working on. The second thing that I take into consideration is that this is a AAA game, and there's a certain thing about like like how we get reminded of Bernard Herrmann's score for what's the thing, the high string thing. What film was that for again? Psycho.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like there's a certain element where like we hear those riffs, and we associate it right away with horror movies, even though like you're not born into this world knowing that that's a thing that you will hear in horror movies. But with like pop culture and where it has come around, we have a certain association of what AAA games should sound like. There's a certain orchestral quality and how grand it's supposed to be that it needs to get to. So we wanted to bring a certain level of that AAA sounding thing into his music a little bit. I guess like you could say like commercializing it a little bit. That may sound like a bad word for that, but I think there's a certain level of grandioso that has to be achieved in order for it to sound like the epic AAA game soundtrack. So that goes to the arrangement as well. And the third thing is just that, hey, where are we seeing this music getting used? Let's say if their goal is that, oh, we want this to be kind of an environmental music. Okay, that can kind of like, the theme has to be presented a bit differently in that case. If they go, oh, we want this for like, this big claustrophobic battle thing with the Mongols, then that's got to sound a little bit different too. So we got the kind of, all these elements together, and then I can kind of start to be like, how do I hit all of that within this one piece of music? And then I'll start, putting the composer demos in my DAW and start sketching out a few arrangement ideas and start putting them together, and send it off for review with Pete, who's a score producer, and also with Brad Meyer, the audio director, and the team at Sucker Punch as well, to see if, hey, is this hitting it for you guys? Are you guys feeling like this is something that you're here to hear in your game or not. So yeah, hope that answers the question. It's a little vague, but yeah.
No, yeah, it's a tough process to give a step by step and give a
Yeah.
framework for it. That's why I like to ask, because I think everyone kind of gives a different sort of like a window. Is a word I'll steal from you. They give a like sort of a different window to look through on the process, and I think it's just really interesting to hear kind of how everyone approaches it, and like throughout the process what they're thinking of and what they have to consider, especially as the projects are different.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So very cool. Um, and here's a tough one, I think, for a lot of people. I think finishing a piece of music is tough in general, like especially like composers when it's their own music, especially they've got a lot of identity tied to it, and then when you finish it, it's finished, and that can be very anxiety producing for some people. How do you, with like either your original compositions or your arrangements, how do you kind of know you're hitting that, like you're okay with this being done? Like, is it something where you're iterating and iterating and iterating, and someone's like, "That's it, you're good now, move on to the next thing," or is it something where like you have to kind of say like, "All right, here it is. I think this is done. I think it works," and then you just kind of get it sent off to get sort of like the
The
review
approval.
and like the approval. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. Well, it's well, first of all, right, I want to write music that I enjoy listening to. So I want to get it there first. Like I want to be jamming to my own music in my living room, right? Like I mean, like I think that's why we're here, because we brought our own, like favorite taste and the bands that we like, the composers that we like. We bring all that to the table, and I want to create something that I would enjoy listening to. So first of all, I wanted to get there, and that will be the point where I'm like, I'm jamming to this. And then the second bit of it is like, okay, like I said before, is it hitting all these parameters yet? And then maybe I will go, crap. I mean, I am trying to imagine this thing against that bit of gameplay, doesn't quite work. Maybe I'll reiterate one more time. Um, so then that will be that. And then the third bit is just like you said, when the client goes, this sounds great, we love it, send the stems over. That is when I feel like, oh, it's done. And a lot of times it like these process goes like, it shuffles as well. It will go like, I'll hit the notes first of what needs to happen, and then we'll try to make it enjoyable later, and then get the approval. Sometimes things get approved before I even get to enjoy my music, and then I would try to do something afterwards to make it so that I myself am proud of it as well.
So like sometimes you're like showing them something that you think is like maybe not quite there yet in terms of like what you would be doing to it, and then they're like, perfect, love it, keep it.
Yeah, it has happened before, but I would just be upfront, and just be like, I don't enjoy it 100%. It works with what you're asking for. Can I give it another try? That is something that I tend to do often, and just because I know what I enjoy, and if I'm not hitting that spot in my heart, I just feel guilty just putting that out there. It just feels insincere, right? It feels almost like, man, like I got to sit in this seat that everybody would want to sit, and I'm not trying my best. What is wrong with me? So even though they may love it, and to be honest with you, a lot of times the things that we love ended up not really making it, just because it's not really hitting the notes. So there's definitely going to be some compromise along the way.
Yeah, and I think it's also really important to have that openness in in asking. First of all, you're putting out there that you feel like you could go more, go further with it, and that you're not satisfied with the product yet. But then you're also asking because you know that the answer could be no, because
Hmm.
there's this whole pipeline that needs to happen,
Yeah.
and the game, the game release date typically does
Yeah,
not
that's why
change.
there
You
are
know what I'm saying?
deadlines, right?
Yep.
It's like, like at some point it becomes just like, if you keep wanting to reiterate for yourself, it's just, that's just selfish by that point. You're not thinking of other people. Like, let's say like there's a sound designer waiting for music to get in, and it just hasn't gotten in, and they can't work because of us and stuff like that. I mean, that's why we have, score producers and, audio directors to kind of help us keep in tabs of these things and making sure that, we're not like being overly conscious and spending too much time in this one area that's already working well in their mind.
Yeah, keeping that meta perspective and
Priorities.
helping exactly. I was just about to say helping everyone prioritize, because when you're in the weeds, sometimes it's hard to see the forest.
Yeah, we love it too much, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I can't lie, like there was this one mission in Ghost that I spent so much time on it because I love it so much. The Siege of Yarikawa,
Hmm.
that's towards further into Act 3 of the game. I'm not going to give any spoilers here, but it was one of those missions where I felt like this is like an opportunity to do something pretty cool, but then I set out this goal like I want to use one piece of music only, just to make sure that I can establish a theme from this top to bottom of this mission and stuff like that. And then I got really obsessed with it. I keep like reiterating it until they go like, "Though it sounds great, you should stop."
Yep.
So it has happened.
Yeah, and I mean that's great though. That's another advantage of having a team sometimes, because if you're by yourself, like it's really easy to get it's really easy to get
Yeah.
stuck there. And I think that a lot of people starting out, especially who maybe don't recognize that that's what's happening, they are stuck in revision mode, and it's
Well,
a
because you want to put out a masterpiece, right? You
right.
want perfection for yourself, but at the same time, like your masterpiece is like it's always a moving target. It doesn't exist. I've tried to chase after it, and then I realized that it's not worth it because by the time I've gotten there, I would be like, well, now that doesn't sound quite right to me still. And I just feel like, you know, that's like you said, it's a great benefit of having people around you to like give you a reality check and just be like, hey man, like you've done great and it's like sounding great already. Move on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also positive reinforcement never hurts, especially But like I think that it's funny because a lot of the other composers I interview, they sort of share that same thing where it's like they finish exactly what we are talking about, the masterpiece being like the moving target, where it's like they've just completed a project that I and the rest of the gaming world are like, wow,
Right.
amazing, your best work yet, awesome. And I like, I kind of lean into it like early on in the conversation of like, this is amazing, the music is this, music is that, I love, and they're like, yeah, it's first of all they always say thank you and they're very humble, but then they're that humble, that humility goes a little bit further, and you always get like a little taste of like, there's actually a couple of things, I'm not sure about, it's like there's always something that they wish they could have done better or done it
Mhm.
differently looking back. And it's just so funny. It is totally a moving target, and I think that's a good thing, because if you ever feel like you're done and you've arrived, then what the hell do you do next?
Well, I think it's trying to settle down with the fact that perfection doesn't exist and that it's always going to be like if I try to focus my efforts now and it used to be very different, but my focus now is not the end result, but it's the impact along the way that I'm able to have. So let's say that I'm able to realize this one mission that I was talking about, and I know that I've moved it from point A to point B. I've come so far from when it has no music to where it is now. I'm very happy. Whereas if I focus on the end result, it ended up being kind of like what you said, that it has to be perfect checklist of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And a lot of times I ended up walking away, at the end of each workday, and I felt like, ah man, I never did enough, and I should have tackled that little one more thing. The thing was like 3 frames late or something like that. I wish we could rig this to a different trigger so that it would come in early, stuff like that. And then like it just never ending because you just keep finding more things to criticize yourself on because you are your worst critic because you know what your weaknesses are if you're being honest with yourself, right? You know what your weaknesses are and you know like what it is that you kind of feel like you haven't really given it all. But when you focus on things like impact, I'm able to kind of walk away and be like, today I've done great. I've I took this thing from here to all the way over here, and everybody is happy, and the team is being super collaborative about it, and everybody is excited to see where it's going. And I think learning to kind of settle with that has been kind of my battle over the years, and I'm getting better at it. I'm still not perfect at it. There's still moments of wanting perfection and stuff, but I've been trying heavily, at least, to try to hone in on just focusing on impact.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was just thinking, the one of my favorite sayings is "done is better than perfect," and I think that creates forward momentum and
Yeah,
growth and things like that. So cool.
because it's all
Um,
long term, right? It's like, you can't just look at it as like, here's this thing that you're gonna go stop and done. Whereas if you're thinking of like, can I take this to like the next 20%? Have I taken this to the next 30%? It will just keep going further every day.
yeah. Oh man, so such an emotionally heavy
It is,
process,
it is.
creativity. Yeah. And I'm just thinking of like all the people in my head who have that sort of masterpiece mindset of like needing to feeling like they need to create that mindset, especially at the beginning, because I was no different. Like when we were talking before I hit the record button about like why I started the website, and it was started BGM Academy because there was literally I couldn't find any resources for myself wanting to explore this pathway of writing music for games. And I remember the first couple of things I did were just like the stupidest things probably you could possibly do. And like the first thing I did when I was like, I'm gonna write something for a game. I've never written anything before in my life. Full orchestra score in Sibelius. Here we go. Which is obviously like the worst. Like that's like literally setting yourself up for failure in one of the worst ways because I
You
was a
never
singer
know,
first of
though.
all. Well, yeah, but it's I was definitely not making it easy on myself. And
Right,
for
right,
someone
right.
who
Yeah.
did not have any of the composition fundamentals under my belt, or the understanding of the orchestral instruments beyond like I like orchestra, it's pretty, I love to listen to it. I just did not have several skills, and I could have trudged through it. Some people do, but that's just not something I was personally capable of. I needed something external to help me sort of navigate, and that's why I did that. But it's funny. Like the reason I did that was because I had the things in my head. I had like the Final Fantasy soundtracks from when I was listening to, in my head is like, this is the pinnacle. This is what I want to strive for. But I was trying to strive for it in my first shot. It's just like not
Yeah.
fair
I
to
mean,
myself.
we've all been there, right? For me, it was, I got into writing music because I love the band Dream Theater. I don't know if you've heard of them,
Oh yes,
but
yes.
so like I love progressive rock, and I was like, I want to put out like a record that sounds like Dream Theater, and I was like 16 at that point, and it's like know nothing about recording myself, so I did the same thing. I started writing a thing in Sibelius,
Yep.
believe it or not. So because I mean, it was the tools that were available to us that we just gravitate towards, right? So like I was like using Sibelius just to write like some fun stuff, and then this was happened to be the way for me, and that's how I got into it as well. But yeah, wanting to be perfect within your first time is like, it happens to everybody. It still happens to me, like to this day, when I get a new project and I'd be like, I want to impress my boss, I want to impress the client, I need to get this right the first time, and like I have to present gold standard. I'm like, I've had this experience now, I should be great. So to some degree, that feeling doesn't go away. It just comes in like a very different form, and it's still scary to like tackle that feeling every time, right? And just be like, I want this to be perfect. And then I have like, but hang on, little stop. We have like 2 more years to iterate on this. and
Yeah.
and you're not gonna find it to be right the first time, because it's it just never is.
Or if it's right today, it might be wrong 6 months from now when something else changes.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I think that the other funny thing is that people forget who the audience is sometimes. Where like musicians, and this is not just musicians and composers, but like composers, like your audience is your team and who you report to and who you need to get approval from on what you're working on, and that's your audience in a way. But at the end
Yeah.
of the day, everyone's audience is the player.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
what small fraction of the player base has anywhere near the musical knowledge that you and your team have? It's like the curse of knowledge, they say, or it's like you know so much that you forget how little everyone else
Yeah,
knows
yeah.
about what you're doing. And like you were saying earlier, something about like the hit, this cue hit 3 frames late, and like those are things that you and people in your position may be like, totally saw it, got it, but like that's like 10 people who maybe notice
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
And so the 12-year
I
old who's like,
mean,
this game's awesome, I love the music, I'm
like
pumped, I'm ready to.
who's gonna know
Yeah.
the drum is like half a dB too high on their like home TV speaker, and I'm like, but it's that obsession, isn't it, that brings us to where we are right now, right? I think it's always a double-edged sword. When you love something, you can't help but being passionate about, getting the hits not 3 frames or 2 frames wrong. It's just getting it right. And it's why we have the career and the profession that we have. It's from that little obsession, but it also kills you in a different way as well, of like having the sensitivity to that stuff that you just like, it's unique to you, like you have this very specific connection to music, and other people were just like, you crazy.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we've helped some people work through some emotional baggage about being a musician today,
I'm sorry
because
to get like so philosophical about this stuff,
no.
but I feel like, it's an important part of who we are and what we do, and I think music is an incredibly passionate thing to begin with. Like, it's personal to me, and I'm sure it is personal to you. And like we still have the thing where whenever we get criticized, we feel slightly attacked, even though they're not like criticizing us, they're just criticizing the product you present. And for numerous of ways, it's not your fault. Like, it may be like you didn't know the certain information or something, but you can't help but this baby that you made sort of got attacked. And like, in like my arranging and editing sort of thing, it's even more diluted, because like, it's not even my music to begin with, and when I got criticized for a certain arrangement, it's like, something's not right. It's like, why is it that I have to feel offended? But I can't help, just because I love it too much.
Yeah, it's that piece of identity that gets tied into what you're working on and any
Yeah,
job, really.
exactly.
So totally. Well, Bill, thank you so much for spending some
Thank
time
you.
with us this afternoon. Like I said, it's been amazing getting to know you, first of all, as well as just hearing your experience working on some of these projects and sort of your process. And I know that people who are just getting started or want to consider getting started doing any sort of audio or music in the game industry is going to find this really interesting and helpful to sort of shape, hopefully, their perspective on entering the game industry. Because I think you have such a unique perspective, and in a lot of ways you've got like kind of a unique space where you're sort of operating in,
Yeah.
which is just really cool. And I think that there are a lot of people who really enjoy doing work like you do. So thank you again so much for
Thank
taking
you.
time.
Thank you.
Yeah, and congratulations on the success of Ghost of Tsushima. Did I get it right this time? Yes, I did. Yes, awesome.
Yes.
Ghost of Tsushima. I had to double check. Did I mix up? Yeah, I mean, it's just a beautiful and amazing game, and the scope of it is just crazy. So congratulations.
Well, thank you so much again, and to everybody who gets to watch this video. Really, I think, like, you don't have to kind of follow other people's path in a certain sense, that like, oh, there's only one way to success and stuff. But just to go off from what you were saying before about the fact that I have kind of a unique spot here, was that at first I realized that, crap, I'm gonna have to be like that guy and that guy, and I quit the job. And then now I kind of started realizing later that, oh shit, I'm like making a little bit of a space of my own and be my own person at this company. And I was like, that's allowed? But I guess it is. And the fact that I'm here talking to you right now, and should be sort of an encouragement of sort to, hopefully, into everybody who gets to watch this, is that like, you can absolutely do whatever that connects to you emotionally or personally. And that always translates into your audience, whether it's a little group that you have, like kind of like what you're doing. Like, you have a passion for education, for video game music, and that passion is being translated to your community. And I feel like I think it's important to be honest to ourselves and not get blindsided by the fact that there is one right way to do this certain career and stuff like that. So
Yeah, especially in this industry where it's just like literally every 10 years looks so different. So,
yeah.
Bill, for those of you, for the folks who've watched this and think to themselves, where can I get more Bill Hemstapat? Where should they go to find more Bill Hemstapat online?
I have my website. You could just search for my name on Google. It will come up, and feel free to connect me with me on Facebook as well. You know, Bill Piyatut Hemstapat on Facebook. But don't hesitate to also like send me an email through my website if you want to. I think I'm happy to help out with anybody who may have sort of whether it is questions or that you just want to discuss a few topics about game music or just video game industry in general. Feel free to talk to me.
Awesome. All right, folks, that was our interview with Bill Hemstapat. So again, thank you, and I know that this is going to be great. So I'm going to sign off, and we will see you next time.
All right.